It was not a war, it was not a revolution, it was not an empire rising or falling, yet it brought more death than all three combined. In the year 1347, death came riding, not with armies or banners, but on the backs of rats, in the bellies of fleas, and in the winds of trade. It would come to be known as the Black Death. Over the next 4 years, this plague would tear through Asia, the Middle East and Europe, claiming tens of millions of lives. It would turn villages into ghost towns, kings into corpses, and priests into grave diggers. And yet, out of this darkness, something unexpected would happen. Humanity would not fall, it would change, drastically. This is the story of how the deadliest pandemic in recorded history didn't just destroy, but reshaped the very foundation of the world we live in today. The early 14th century was a time of delicate balance. Europe was not at peace, but it was relatively stable. Feudalism ruled the land, with noble lords and hard-working peasants forming a rigid hierarchy. Cities were growing, trade routes crisscrossed continents. From the ports of Genoa to the markets of Constantinople, merchants bartered silk, spices, and salt. Knowledge flowed with it. Arabic texts, mathematical systems, and scientific thought sparked a quiet renaissance long before the Renaissance began. But beneath this surface of progress, the world was fragile. Harvests were often poor. Famines swept through with cruel regularity. Hygiene was rudimentary, medicine primitive. And into this volatile world, something stirred in the East, something ancient, something deadly. Most historians trace the origins of the Black Death to the arid plains of Central Asia, modern-day Mongolia, near Lake Issyk-Kul. Here, Yersinia pestis, the bacterium behind the plague, lay dormant in rodent populations. When disrupted by war, migration, and trade, it found new hosts. Fleas, which in turn clung to rats, who traveled in caravans and ships. The Mongol Empire, the most powerful land empire in history, played an unintended role. As they opened the Silk Road for commerce, they also opened a corridor for contagion. By the 1330s, reports of plague began to surface in China. Famine and natural disasters already weakened the population. When the plague hit, the result was catastrophic. Entire towns vanished. The dead piled up faster than they could be buried. In October of 1347, 12 Genoese trading ships arrived at the Sicilian port of Messina. On board, a nightmare. Most of the crew were dead. The survivors were covered in black boils and oozing sores. Within days, the city was infected. Authorities tried to drive the ships away, but it was too late. The Black Death had entered Europe. From Messina, it spread rapidly. Palermo, Marseille, Paris, London. Like a firestorm, it leapt from city to city, carried by merchants, soldiers, pilgrims, and rats. The symptoms were terrifying. Victims suffered fever, chills, vomiting, and swelling of the lymph nodes, called buboes, which turned black, giving the plague its name. Most died within 2 to 7 days. Entire families vanished in a week, streets filled with the stench of decay. Cats and dogs fed on the bodies, bell towers tolled without rest. The fear was palpable. No one understood what caused the plague. Theories ranged from poisoned wells and bad air to divine punishment. In some towns, Jews were massacred, accused of causing the disease. The panic was as deadly as the disease itself. With death came collapse. Entire villages were deserted. Farmers stopped working the land. Priests stopped visiting the sick. Doctors either fled or died. In Florence, Giovanni Boccaccio wrote, "Brother abandoned brother, and the father his child. Corpses were left in the streets. The sick died without care, and the dead were left unburied. Religious fanatics called flagellants roamed Europe, whipping themselves in public, begging for God's forgiveness. The Catholic Church, unable to stop the plague, saw its authority questioned for the first time in centuries." By 1351, the Black Death had run its course across Europe. It killed an estimated 75 to 200 million people worldwide, including 30 to 60% of Europe's population. Some towns lost 90% of their population. In England alone, over 1.5 million people died. Out of a population of 4 million, the world would never be the same. But in its ashes, a transformation was beginning, socially, economically, culturally. And that's what we'll explore in part 2. What happens when an entire system collapses, when death touches every corner of society, when old beliefs fall and survival becomes the only faith? The Black Death was not just a catastrophe, it was a revolution. In part 2 of this series, we'll explore how the world responded and how the aftermath of the plague planted the seeds of the modern world, the rise of the middle class, revolutions in medicine and science, the weakening of the church, and the rebirth of Europe itself. Don't miss it. Subscribe and journey with us through the echoes and origins of history.